My father lost everything in a bankruptcy, but when we were cleaning out his house, I found a letter that changed everything I thought I knew about him. The auction sign went up before I could even park the car. Red and white, nailed into the wet ground like a final insult. Estate sale, it said. No one even called it his home anymore. Just an estate. Something to be sorted, priced, and picked over. My boots sank in the slush as I stepped onto the lawn. The old place looked smaller than I remembered. The windows were gray with dust, the porch paint curling off in flakes, like it had just given up trying. In a way, I understood. My name's Adam. I'm 38. And until 6 months ago, I thought I knew what kind of man my father was. Proud, hard-headed, stubborn as hell, and a failure. That last part one never said aloud, but it lived in my chest like a shame I didn't earn. He lost everything. Not in some dramatic Wall Street scandal. No, my father wasn't that interesting. He ran a local hardware store in Bridgeport for 32 years. The kind with creaky floors and handwritten signs, where everyone knew his name and owed him money. Then one day he closed early. I remember because I got a text from my Uncle Dan. Your dad locked up the store. Didn't say why. Within a week, it was gone. Everything. Inventory cleared out, for lease signs slapped in the window, and my father wasn't answering his phone. When I finally found him, he looked smaller, deflated, like someone had siphoned out his soul. It's all gone, Adam, he said. I held on too long. Should have let go before it bled me dry. I didn't know what to say. What do you say when the strongest man you knew just admits he drowned trying to save a ship no one wanted to board anymore? He moved into a one-bedroom apartment over on Main. Said he was fine. Said not to worry. Said a lot of things, none of them true. Then 3 months later, I got the call from the hospital. Heart attack. Second one. This time it stuck. And now here I was, back in the house I grew up in, tasked with sorting out the remnants of his life. A foreclosure cleanup, but more personal. My brother Jake was supposed to meet me there, but as usual, he was late. Or maybe just avoiding it. He was always good at disappearing when the work got emotional. I stepped inside. It still smelled like him. Sawdust, coffee, and the faint musk of old paper. The furniture was mostly gone already, picked off by distant cousins and neighbors with trucks. All that remained were boxes. Stacks and stacks of boxes. Dad kept everything. Receipts from 1997. Expired coupons. Tools with no handles. I started sifting through them out of obligation more than curiosity. The first hour passed in silence. Just me, dust, and the occasional squeak of a floorboard reminding me how empty the place had become. Then I found the envelope. It was wedged between old tax documents and a broken tape measure. Yellowed paper, sealed, no address. Just my name, in his blocky handwriting. Adam, do not open until I'm gone. My breath caught. For a second, I thought it might be a will. But we already had that. This was personal. Intentional. Like he'd planned for me to find it exactly like this. I sat on the bare floor and held it in my hands. It felt heavier than it should have. Not weight-wise. Just emotionally loaded. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, neatly folded. Adam, if you're reading this, then I'm not around to explain. And maybe that's for the best. I was never good at saying what mattered most. You always saw me as a stubborn old man who ruined his own life. And maybe that's true. But it's not the whole story. There are things you never knew. Things I never told you. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I wanted to protect you from the parts of me that couldn't be fixed. But now you deserve the truth. My hands started to sweat. My father had never been a dramatic man. If he wrote something like this, it meant something was buried deep. Something he couldn't face while he was alive. I read the next line and felt the floor fall out from under me. It wasn't just debt, Adam. I lost the store because I made a deal I shouldn't have. One that cost more than money. One that could still hurt people if it ever came out. I read the rest. Slowly. Carefully. And with every word, the man I thought I knew faded away. Replaced by someone far more complicated, far more human, and far more dangerous than I ever imagined. That letter didn't just change how I saw him. It changed everything. The front door creaked open just as I tucked the letter back into its envelope. Jake walked in without knocking, as usual, letting the cold wind trail behind him. You start without me, he asked, brushing snow from his jacket sleeves. You're 2 hours late. He held up a paper coffee tray like a peace offering. Traffic. Coffee. I nodded toward the kitchen. Counter's fine. Jake's eyes scanned the room. Still smells like him. You find anything? I held up the envelope. This. He cocked his head. What is it? A letter. From Dad. For me. Says not to open it until he was gone. That sobered him. Jake stepped closer, lips tightening. What's it say? I handed it over. He read it leaning against the wall, jaw clenched the whole time. Damn, he whispered. So it wasn't just bad luck. Nope. It was a deal. One he regretted. Jake handed it back, quieter now. You think there's more? I know there is. We started digging. Not just to clean, to uncover. Dad didn't leave that letter by accident. He wanted me to find something. Maybe all of it. Jake was in the garage when he called out, Hey, Adam, you better see this. He held up a rusted toolbox. Inside it, duct taped to the underside of the lid, was another envelope. Thicker, with a name scrawled across it. R. Caldwell. We looked at each other. You ever hear of him? I asked. Jake shook his head. Never. I opened the envelope. Inside, a typed letter, a payment log, and what looked like an unsigned contract. I skimmed the first page. Private loan. Off the books. Silent partner agreement. Jesus, Jake muttered. Dad got into bed with someone real bad. There was one line near the bottom that chilled me. All liabilities shall be considered void upon destruction of the related documents. Failure to comply may result in litigation or public exposure. I stared at it. He didn't destroy anything. I whispered. Jake leaned in. That's why he wrote you. He knew someone would come looking. I felt the weight of the papers in my hand. Our father had been many things. But this was something else entirely. He hadn't just lost everything. He buried the truth with it. And now it was ours to uncover. We stayed up that night in the garage, hunched over the workbench, sorting through papers and memories soaked in dust and secrets. Jake paced like he was circling a crime scene. I sat, piecing together fragments that didn't want to fit. You think Caldwell's still out there? Jake asked, breaking the silence. If he's not, someone is. This deal wasn't made in a vacuum. Jake grabbed a manila folder and held it up. You think Dad ever did stuff like this before? Other deals? Side hustles? I shook my head. No. Or, maybe. I don't know anymore. He sighed and leaned against the workbench. I always thought he was boring. Stubborn, cheap, predictable. But this? I looked at him. This makes me wonder what else he lied about. Jake didn't respond. We found a contact list next, hidden in a hollowed-out book that used to sit on the fireplace mantel. Names, numbers, dates. Next to some were check marks. Next to others, big red XS. You think these are people involved? Or people he warned? I said. Jake pulled out his phone. I'm gonna call one. Are you serious? He shrugged. I don't like mysteries. I watched as he dialed. He put the call on speaker. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered. Who is this? Jake cleared his throat. I'm Jake Barrett, son of Martin Barrett. Silence. Then, if you know what's good for you, stop looking. Click. We sat there, blinking. Well, Jake said, voice dry. That was encouraging. What the hell was that? He stared at the phone. Someone who knew exactly who Dad was. We didn't talk much after that. We gathered what we could, took photos, boxed the evidence. The house no longer felt like a place we grew up. It felt like a crime scene waiting to be discovered. And we weren't sure yet if we were witnesses, victims, or accomplices. The next morning, Jake and I sat at the kitchen table of the old house. Papers spread around us like we were piecing together some buried war plan. I hadn't slept. Every creak in the floorboards, every gust of wind outside, it all sounded like someone coming for us. You realize what this means, right? Jake asked, his coffee untouched. I nodded. Dad wasn't just covering up bad business decisions. He was hiding from something. Or someone. Jake pulled a photograph from the pile. It showed our dad, must have been 10 years ago, shaking hands with a man in a beige coat and sunglasses. Caldwell, you think this guy's the same Caldwell from the envelope? Could be. Or maybe someone worse. Jake snorted. What's worse than the man Dad died afraid of? I didn't answer, because I had the same question, and I was starting to think we were about to find out. The house phone rang. We both jumped. It was a landline, dusty, forgotten on the wall. We hadn't even noticed it still worked. Jake reached for it, but stopped. Should we? I picked it up. Hello. Static. Then a voice, calm and deep. You've opened things best left closed, Adam. Click. I froze. What did they say? Jake asked, his eyes wide. I couldn't find my voice. Jake grabbed the phone. Dead tone. How the hell do they even know we're here? He asked. I was still staring at the receiver. Because they were never gone. We had a decision to make. Either turn over what we found, or keep digging. We chose wrong. That afternoon, we went to Dad's storage unit. One we didn't even know existed until I found the key taped under a drawer in his workbench. The place was quiet gray, just rows of cold steel doors. Ours was number 118. Jake slid the key in. The door groaned upward. Inside were crates. Some labeled, some not. I opened the nearest one. Inside, stacks of cash. Neatly bound. Sealed in plastic. Not bills from today, older currency. A decade old, maybe more. Jesus, Jake whispered. How? We opened another. Files. Photos. Surveillance images. Of people. Of us. My stomach turned. Dad was being watched, I said. Or he was watching. Jake held up a black binder. Inside, documents marked confidential. Property transactions. Payoffs. Corporate filings under aliases. Was he laundering? Jake asked. I didn't answer. Because at that point, I didn't know if we were unraveling a secret life or creating one with every new discovery. I didn't know this. Whatever my father had buried, he'd buried deep. But someone else, someone very alive, was digging too. That night, Jake and I split the motel room we booked in a rush, far from the house, far from the storage unit. Neither of us said it aloud, but we both felt it. We were being watched. Jake sat by the window, the blinds cracked just enough to catch headlights. He had Dad's black binder on the bed beside him, flipping pages like he was hunting for an answer that wouldn't come. You think he was a criminal? He asked suddenly. I didn't respond right away, because I didn't know the answer. Maybe not in the way you're thinking, I said. But definitely not the man we thought. Jake closed the binder. So what do we do now? Go to the police? With what? Files he kept hidden in a storage unit? A phone call from a ghost? He rubbed his jaw, frustrated. We can't just sit here. I looked at him. No, we can't. So we made a list. Names from the contact book. Documents with addresses. Transactions that didn't make sense. A web we didn't understand. At the center, one name repeated over and over again. Caldwell. Jake leaned forward. We find Caldwell. I stared at him. And then what? Ask him to fill in the blanks? You heard that call, Jake. These people don't send warnings twice. He smiled grimly. Then maybe we don't wait for a second warning. We bring the storm to their door first. I didn't like it, but I didn't have a better idea. The first lead was a P.O. box listed on one of the silent partner agreements. We drove out to a post office 2 towns over. Old, run down. The kind with faded stamps behind scratched plexiglass. I walked in, asked to speak to the clerk. Box 416, I said. We need to know who it's registered to. The woman behind the counter narrowed her eyes. You police? No, just family business. She tapped the counter twice, then walked away without a word. I thought we'd hit a wall, but when she returned, she handed me a scrap of paper. A name, a phone number, written in blue ink. Don't tell anyone you got that here, she muttered. Back in the car, Jake stared at the number. We calling it. I hesitated, then dialed. It rang once, twice, then. This is Caldwell. My throat tightened. I'm Adam Barrett. My father. I know who your father was, Caldwell said. His voice was smoother now. Less like a warning, more like a door creaking open. I wondered how long it would take you to find me. Jake leaned in. You knew he was dead? I asked. A pause. I know a lot of things, Adam, including what you're sitting on. Then you know I want answers. No, he said calmly. What you want is leverage. But here's the thing. That binder, those files, they're not worth what you think, unless you know how to use them. My pulse quickened. Meet me, he said. Tomorrow, 11 a.m., Dock 14. Riverfront. Come alone. Click. Jake looked at me. You going? I didn't answer, because we both knew I would. The next morning, I stood by the river, wind biting at my coat, eyes fixed on Dock 14. Jake wanted to come. Fought me on it. But Caldwell said alone, and I didn't want to risk him. Not yet. The riverfront was half forgotten, a place people used to care about when boats meant something. Now, it was rusted rails, moss-covered planks, and graffiti scrawled across forgotten warehouses. A car pulled up behind me. Black. Unmarked. A door opened, and a man stepped out. Caldwell. He looked exactly like I expected. Pressed slacks, dark coat, silver hair, eyes that didn't blink more than necessary. Like a politician who'd lost the taste for cameras, but not the power. You brought the files? He asked. I held up a flash drive. He nodded, satisfied. Smart. Copies. Tell me what you want with my father. He smiled faintly. That's not the question you should be asking. Then what is? What did your father want with me? That threw me. Caldwell stepped closer. Martin came to me. Not the other way around. He was in debt. Desperate. And he had one thing I wanted. Which was? Access. Influence. A pipeline. He was small, but he was trusted. I needed someone like that. I felt sick. You used him. I paid him. Well, until he wanted out. So you threatened him. He broke our agreement. People get nervous when a partner walks. Nervous people make calls. He paused, then added, Your father wasn't scared of me, Adam. He was scared of what he'd become. I clenched my jaw. Why didn't you come after him publicly? Sue him? Take him down? Because that wasn't the point. Fear is cleaner than lawsuits. He stepped closer. Now here you are, holding pieces of a machine you don't understand. I swallowed hard. Then explain it. He raised an eyebrow. Why would I do that? Because if I go down, this goes down with me. I've made sure of it. A flicker of respect crossed his face. Just for a second. You're bluffing. Try me. He smiled, colder this time. You've got 48 hours. Then this little discovery project of yours ends. One way or another. He turned, walked back to his car, and drove away. I stood there, breath frozen in my chest. Caldwell wasn't just a threat. He was a storm, and my father, the man I thought I knew, had danced in the middle of it. I headed back to the motel. Jake was pacing. Well, he asked. I tossed him the flash drive. We've got 48 hours. He stared. Until what? Until everything collapses. Or we burn it down ourselves first. He nodded. Then let's finish what Dad started. We didn't sleep that night. We didn't plan to. The next morning, I watched Jake spread everything across the motel bed. Documents, receipts, names, the flash drive. We had two choices, disappear or go nuclear. Jake tapped a photo. This guy? I've seen him before. He owns that warehouse off Industrial, near the old rail yard. The same warehouse we used to bike past as kids, the one Mom always told us to avoid. Now it made sense. You think it's Caldwell's base? I asked. Or a drop site. Either way, it's our next stop. We went at dusk. The rail yard groaned under the weight of rusted machinery and forgotten time. Jake parked 2 blocks away. We walked the rest. The warehouse looked dead, but inside, we could hear movement. Voices. A low generator hum. We snuck around back. Jake found a broken panel in the siding and slipped through. I followed. Inside was chaos, organized chaos. Files, hard drives, cash boxes. Surveillance monitors showing locations I recognized. Dad's store. The house. The motel. My blood ran cold. They were watching us the whole time. A voice echoed. They're here. We froze. Jake grabbed my arm. We ducked behind a shelf as footsteps approached. 2 men walked past, armed. Jake leaned in. We're not walking out of here with files. We need evidence. Photos. Now. I pulled out my phone. Snapped images. Fast. Risky. Then the power cut. The warehouse went dark. Generators hissed. An alarm blared. Move. Jake yelled. We ran. Back through the siding. Out into the night. Tires screeched nearby. I didn't look back. We made it to the car and peeled off. Back at the motel, Jake collapsed on the bed. They knew we were coming. I nodded. But we got what we need. Photos. Names. Proof. Jake looked at me. You ready to release it? I stared at the flash drive. Tomorrow. Let's give them one last night to sweat. Jake grinned. Dad would have liked that. We locked the door, blocked the windows, and waited for the storm we'd just unleashed to hit us back. We didn't sleep. I watched the sky go from black to gray from behind the curtain, flash drive in hand, heart pounding like I was holding a detonator. Jake brewed the worst motel coffee I'd ever tasted and said nothing while it cooled untouched. The silence was too loud. It's time, I finally said. We loaded the files. Photos, documents, everything. Sent them to 3 journalists. 1 watchdog group, a lawyer Dad once trusted, and 1 last recipient, Caldwell. No subject line, no note, just the truth. We waited. An hour passed. 2. Then the messages started. 1 reporter, we need to talk. Another, where did you get this? The watchdog group called it explosive, but it was the last message that rattled me. Caldwell, you made your point. Now listen to mine. Then the power in the motel cut. Jake and I both stood. Pack, I said. We're leaving. As we headed for the car, I saw a man across the parking lot. Black coat. Calm stance. Watching. Not moving. Not smiling. Just watching. Jake floored it. We drove for hours. Changed motels twice. Got burner phones. No names. No cards. Just instinct and adrenaline. And then, just as suddenly, the silence. No more messages. No more eyes. We waited. And one by one, the articles dropped. Local businessman tied to a legal network. Secret dealings hidden in plain sight. Anonymous source exposes decades-long operation. Our father's name was there, but so was Caldwell's. And his empire started to unravel. Jake looked at me one night, tired but lighter. You think he knew this would happen, Dad? I think he knew this was the only way to make it right. We didn't return to Bridgeport. Not for a while. But when we did, the auction sign was gone. The house was sold to a young couple with loud kids and a golden retriever. The hardware store? Someone reopened it. New name, fresh paint. But the creaky floors stayed. And every now and then, I'd walk by, just to remember. Because my father wasn't the man I thought. He was broken, flawed, afraid. But in the end, he left us the only thing that ever mattered. A chance to make things right. And we did. 6 months later, I stood at my father's grave with nothing but silence and a bottle of the scotch he used to hide behind the garage freezer. The cemetery was quiet, just the way he'd like it. No fanfare, no long eulogies, just wind in the trees and cold in the bones. Jake stood beside me, hands in his coat pockets, eyes fixed on the stone. I used to think he was weak, Jake said, for folding, for hiding. But now I think he was the only one playing the long game. I nodded. We drank. Quietly. Caldwell's name was still in the papers. Federal hearings. Asset seizures. Associates turning. Like dominoes in reverse. Everything falling back on him. But the thing no one knew? The files we released, those were only half of it. The rest we kept. Buried. For insurance. Call it paranoia. Call it survival. Call it legacy. Jake called it balance. Me? I called it closure. Think he'd be proud? Jake asked. I looked at the grave. I think he'd be relieved. Later that night, I opened the last box we hadn't touched. It was tucked in the back of Dad's closet. Old military trunk. I almost didn't open it. Inside were journals. Dozens. The first page of the first one simply said, "If they find me, let them find the truth first." And beneath it, "Adam, if you're reading this, you already did." That's when I cried. Really cried. The way you do when the past finally lets go of your throat. My father didn't just leave behind secrets. He left behind a path. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who he was. Not a criminal. Not a coward. A man who did terrible things for the right reasons and trusted his sons to fix what he couldn't. The story didn't end with his death. It began with it. The day I visited the hardware store again. It had been almost a year since we exposed everything. The town had changed. Not by much. Bridgeport never did. But there was less whispering. Less weight in the air. The new owner, a guy named Marcus, recognized me. "You're Martin's boy, right?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Adam." He nodded. "He used to fix my dad's boat motor when I was a kid. Wouldn't take a dime. Just asked for pie." That sounded like him. Marcus reached under the counter and pulled out a small wooden box. "This came with the building," he said. "Your dad labeled it for you. Said not to open unless you came back." My hands trembled as I took it. Back home, I opened the box. Inside, a single Polaroid of me and Jake, maybe age 8 and 10, standing in front of the store with Dad behind us. He had his arms around our shoulders. Taped to the back was a note. "You boys were always my clean start. No matter how dirty things got. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I sat there for a long time. Not crying. Just still. Because sometimes the story isn't about what was broken. It's about who was strong enough to rebuild. And maybe that's what Dad always wanted. Not to be remembered as the man who failed, but as the man who gave us the truth and trusted us to survive it.